I found the life insurance papers in my husband's briefcase, $2 million, with me as the insured and him as the beneficiary. We were leaving for our romantic mountain anniversary trip in 3 days. That's when I remembered, my husband had been unusually insistent about me not wearing my seatbelt because it wrinkled my dress. And he'd just had our car's brakes serviced by a mechanic I'd never heard of. My name is Diane Harper, and at 64 years old, I thought I knew everything about my husband of 43 years. But standing in our home office at 2:30 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, holding papers that valued my life at $2 million, I realized I didn't know Robert at all. It started innocently enough. Robert had asked me to find his reading glasses in his study, something he did at least twice a week. His briefcase was open on the desk, and as I moved it to check underneath, a folder slipped out. The header caught my eye immediately: Metropolitan Life Insurance, Policy Activation Confirmation. Curiosity got the better of me. We already had life insurance, modest policies we'd taken out decades ago when the kids were young. Why would Robert need new documentation? I opened the folder. The first page was straightforward enough. Policy holder: Robert James Harper. Insured party: Diane Marie Harper. Beneficiary: Robert James Harper. Coverage amount: $2 million. $2 million. My hands started shaking. I sat down in Robert's leather chair, the same chair where he'd sit every evening, supposedly reviewing his golf club's financial reports. The same chair where he'd been spending increasingly long hours over the past 6 months. The policy was dated 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks, and he'd never mentioned it. I flipped through the pages, trying to make sense of the legal jargon. Then I found the clause that made my blood run cold: double indemnity provision. In the event of accidental death, beneficiary payout increases to $4 million. $4 million if I died in an accident. My mind flashed to our upcoming trip. Robert had been planning our 43rd anniversary getaway for months, a romantic weekend at the Grand Ridge Mountain Lodge, the same place we'd honeymooned. He'd been so excited, more animated than I'd seen him in years. "We need this, Diane," he'd said just last week, taking my hands in his. "Time away from everything. Just you and me, like the old days." I'd been touched by his sentimentality. We'd grown apart over the years, the way long-married couples often do. Our conversations had become perfunctory, our routines separate. But this trip felt like a second chance, a renewal of vows unspoken. Now, staring at the insurance papers, that romantic gesture took on a sinister cast. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe Robert was just being responsible. Maybe he'd heard about someone dying unexpectedly and wanted to ensure I'd be taken care of. Maybe, the memory hit me like a physical blow. 2 days ago, Tuesday morning, Robert had insisted on driving me to my book club meeting. Unusual, since I always drove myself, but he'd been insistent. "Let me take care of you," he'd said with that charming smile that had won my heart 43 years ago. As I'd reached for my seatbelt, he'd stopped my hand. "Don't bother with that, sweetheart. It wrinkles your dress, and you look so elegant today. It's just a few miles." I'd laughed, flattered by the compliment, and left the belt unbuckled. We'd only driven 2 blocks when Robert suddenly pulled over. "I forgot something at home," he'd said, seeming genuinely frustrated. "Let me just run back real quick. You don't mind waiting?" He'd been gone for 15 minutes. When he returned, he seemed disappointed? No, that couldn't be right. But his mood had definitely shifted. "You know what? I just remembered I have a call at 10 a.m., he'd said, checking his watch. "Better if you drive yourself after all." At the time, I'd thought nothing of it. Now, the memory made me nauseous. Had that been a test run? Had he been hoping I wouldn't put on my seatbelt even after he left? Had something gone wrong with whatever he'd planned? I forced myself to keep reading the insurance documents. There was a medical examination report. I'd never been asked to take one. How was that possible? The answer was in the fine print. The examination had been waived due to low-risk profile and existing medical records provided by applicant. Robert must have used my medical records from our family doctor. Had Dr. Martinez been in on this? No, more likely Robert had simply requested copies, maybe claiming he needed them for our trip or some other innocent reason. I pulled out my phone and photographed every page of the document. My hands were steadier now, shock giving way to calculated calm. If my husband was planning to kill me, I needed evidence. The next folder in his briefcase contained printouts of emails. I recognized the sender, Mike's Auto Repair, a shop I'd never heard of. Our regular mechanic was Johnson's Garage, where we'd been going for 15 years. The email thread made my throat tighten. From Robert Harper to Mike's Auto Repair date, 1 week ago. Subject: brake service, need brake work done on 2019 Honda CR-V before this weekend. Previous mechanic said pads were fine, but I want them completely replaced. Can you fit me in Thursday afternoon? From Mike's Auto Repair to Robert Harper, sure thing, Mr. Harper. Thursday at 2 p.m. works. Bring her in. Thursday. That was tomorrow. Why would Robert insist on replacing brake pads that our regular mechanic had just certified as fine 2 months ago? Why go to an unfamiliar shop? Unless he wasn't planning to replace them at all. Unless he was planning to sabotage them. I thought about our anniversary trip. The Grand Ridge Mountain Lodge was accessible only by a narrow, winding mountain road. Steep cliffs. Hairpin turns. Speed limits of 35 miles per hour that everyone ignored because the road seemed straightforward enough. Until your brakes failed. I remembered Robert's other recent suggestions. You should drive up to the lodge, Diane. You always said you wanted to conquer your fear of mountain roads. And just yesterday, make sure you don't wear your seatbelt on the drive up. I read an article about how they can actually be dangerous on mountain roads if you go into the water. Better to be thrown clear. Every suggestion, every comment over the past month suddenly took on new meaning. He'd been laying groundwork. Creating a narrative where my death would seem like a tragic accident caused by my own choices. Driving mountain roads I feared, not wearing a seatbelt, maybe driving too fast to prove I wasn't scared. The perfect murder. I sat in that chair for over an hour, documents spread before me, piecing together the full scope of my husband's plan. And then I started planning my own countermove. At 4:15 p.m., I heard Robert's car pull into the driveway. I'd carefully returned everything to his briefcase exactly as I'd found it. I was in the kitchen, preparing dinner as I did every evening, when he walked in. "Something smells wonderful," he said, kissing my cheek. His lips felt like ice against my skin. "Just your favorite," I replied, my voice steady. "Pot roast with those baby potatoes you love." "You spoil me, Di." His use of my old nickname made my stomach turn. "Hey, I confirmed everything for this weekend. We are all set for the lodge. I even upgraded us to the honeymoon suite." "That's lovely," I said, not turning from the stove. "I'm really looking forward to it." "Me too." Was that relief in his voice? I also scheduled a brake check for the car tomorrow, just to be safe for the mountain drive. "Good thinking," I replied. "Safety first." If he noticed the edge in my voice, he didn't show it. That night, I lay in bed next to my husband of 43 years, listening to him breathe, wondering when exactly he'd decided I was worth more dead than alive. Had it been a gradual realization? A sudden temptation? Or had he been planning this for years, waiting for the right moment? I thought about our marriage. We'd had good years, truly good years. We'd raised 3 children who'd moved to various parts of the country. We'd traveled, laughed, built a life together. But somewhere along the way, we'd become strangers sharing a house. 6 months ago, Robert had retired from his position as CFO of Harrington Industries. I'd thought he seemed lost without his career identity. Now I wondered if retirement had simply given him time to plan. The next morning, Wednesday, I made a call. "Martinez Family Practice, how can I help you?" "This is Diane Harper. I need to speak with Dr. Martinez urgently. It's about my medical records." 20 minutes later, I was in Dr. Martinez's office. "Mrs. Harper, what's this about?" Dr. Martinez, a kind woman in her 50s who'd been our family doctor for a decade, looked concerned. Did my husband request copies of my medical records recently? She hesitated, then nodded. About a month ago. He said you were applying for supplemental insurance and needed them. Is something wrong? Did the insurance company contact you directly for verification? No, actually. Robert just picked up the copies. Her expression shifted to alarm. Diane, what's going on? I showed her photographs of the insurance policy on my phone. Her face paled as she read. This is fraud, she said quietly. You never authorized this application. I need to know exactly what information he took, I said. And I need you to document that I never consented to this insurance policy. Dr. Martinez printed out everything Robert had requested. Clean bill of health. No pre-existing conditions. Low risk for someone my age. The perfect candidate for a large life insurance policy with minimal questions asked. What are you going to do? Dr. Martinez asked as I prepared to leave. I'm going to make sure my husband doesn't get away with murder, I replied. My next stop was the police station. I asked specifically for the detective division. Detective Sarah Chen was younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing as I laid out my evidence on her desk. Mrs. Harper, she said carefully after reviewing everything, this is certainly suspicious, but I need to be honest with you. We can't arrest someone for taking out a life insurance policy or scheduling break work. Even when combined with all these other factors. It's concerning, absolutely. But legally, he hasn't committed a crime yet. She leaned forward. However, we can take preventative measures. First, I want you to cancel that mountain trip. Make up an excuse, any excuse. He'll know something's wrong. Better that than you ending up at the bottom of a cliff. Detective Chen pulled out a form. I'm going to file a report documenting your concerns. I'm also going to have a conversation with this Mike's Auto Repair about their Thursday appointment. What if that tips him off? Mrs. Harper, if your suspicions are correct, your husband is planning to murder you this weekend. We need to disrupt that plan, even if it means he knows we are watching. She was right, of course. But the thought of confronting Robert, of shattering the illusion of our marriage completely, filled me with a grief almost as profound as my fear. There's something else, Detective Chen said. I want to wire you. If he says anything incriminating, we'll have it on record. That's how I found myself, at 64 years old, wearing a recording device taped to my chest, preparing to have dinner with a man who wanted me dead. Robert came home at 6:30 p.m., same as always. I had dinner ready, same as always. We sat at our dining room table, same as we had for decades. Everything looked normal. Everything was shattered. So I was thinking, Robert said, cutting into his chicken. Maybe we should leave Friday morning instead of Friday evening. Beat the weekend traffic. Actually, I said, my heart pounding, I need to talk to you about the trip. He looked up sharply. What about it? I'm not feeling well. I think I might be coming down with something. Maybe we should postpone. Postpone. His fork clattered against his plate. Diane, we've had this planned for months. You're probably just nervous about the drive. It's not that, because I told you, I'll drive if you want. Or you can drive and I'll navigate. Whatever makes you comfortable. His voice had taken on an edge I'd never heard before. We are going on this trip, Di. We need this. The desperation in his voice chilled me. This wasn't about romance or reconnect Diane. This was about a timetable, a plan that needed to happen this weekend. Why is it so important we go this weekend specifically? I asked quietly. Robert's expression flickered. Just for a second, I saw something cold and calculating behind his eyes. Then his familiar smile returned. Because I want to celebrate our anniversary on the actual day, Saturday. Come on, sweetheart. Don't back out on me now. That night, Detective Chen called me. We visited Mike's Auto Repair. Interesting place. The owner, Mike Patterson, got very nervous when we started asking questions about your husband's appointment. She paused. Mrs. Harper, he admitted that your husband asked him to weaken your brake lines, not replace the pads. The confirmation, though expected, still felt like a punch to the gut. Mike refused. Thankfully, Chen continued. He's the one who's been trying to call your husband all day to cancel the appointment. Your husband hasn't been answering. Because Robert knew the mechanic had gotten cold feet. So he'd need another plan. What do I do? I asked. You stay home this weekend. Make up any excuse. If he insists, you call 911. We'll have units nearby. And Mrs. Harper? Tomorrow, I want you to file for a restraining order. We'll use the insurance fraud and the attempted solicitation of vehicle tampering as grounds. But I never got the chance. The next morning, Thursday, I woke up at 7 a.m. feeling strange. Dizzy. Nauseous. I stumbled to the bathroom and vomited violently. Through the fog in my head, I heard Robert's voice from the bedroom. Diane? You okay in there? I tried to answer, but the room was spinning. I gripped the edge of the sink, staring at my reflection. My pupils were dilated. My lips were tinged blue. Poison. The thought crystallized through my confusion. The coffee he'd brought me in bed this morning, insisting I drink it while it was hot. A special blend, he'd said. I wanted to start the day right. I'd drunk it to avoid suspicion, to keep pretending everything was normal. But Robert had moved up his timetable. I fumbled for my phone with shaking hands. Detective Chen answered on the first ring. He poisoned me, I managed to whisper before collapsing. I woke up in the hospital 12 hours later. Detective Chen was sitting beside my bed. Welcome back, she said gently. You're going to be fine. We got you here in time. Robert is in custody. When the paramedics arrived, they found him trying to load you into the car. He claimed he was taking you to the hospital, but he was heading in the opposite direction, toward the mountains. She showed me her phone. It was open to a news article. Local man arrested for attempted murder. Insurance plot revealed. The coffee was laced with a sedative and a paralytic agent, Chen explained. Not enough to kill you outright, but enough to make you appear unconscious. Our theory is that he planned to stage the accident today instead of waiting for the weekend. The mechanic refusing to sabotage your brakes forced him to improvise. How did you get there so fast? After our conversation last night, I had plainclothes officers watching your house. When we saw the ambulance arrive, we moved in. She squeezed my hand. You saved your own life, Diane, by speaking up when you did. The trial happened 6 months later. Robert's defense tried to paint me as paranoid, claiming the insurance policy was legitimate and the poisoning was an accident. He'd given me the wrong medication by mistake. But the evidence was overwhelming. The insurance fraud. The emails to multiple mechanics asking about brake sabotage before finding one who initially agreed. Most damning, the internet search history on Robert's laptop. How to make a car accident look natural. Life insurance payout investigation timeline. Untraceable poisons that mimic heart attacks. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Robert James Harper was found guilty of attempted murder, insurance fraud, and solicitation of a felony. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison. I sat in that courtroom and watched them take away the man I'd loved for 43 years. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt hollow. It wasn't until later, when I was going through our finances to disentangle our lives, that I discovered the why behind it all. Robert hadn't just retired. He'd been forced out of Harrington Industries after an internal investigation revealed he'd been embezzling funds for years. The company had agreed not to prosecute if he repaid the money immediately. $3 million. He didn't have it. He'd spent it gambling, trying to win big and replace what he'd stolen. He'd lost everything. Except his wife's life was worth $2 million. $4 million if she died accidentally. It wouldn't have covered his debt entirely, but it would have been enough to avoid prison. Enough to start over somewhere new. I was simply the most convenient solution to his problem. Now, 2 years later, I live alone in a small condo downtown. I sold our house. I couldn't live there anymore, surrounded by memories that had been poisoned more thoroughly than that morning coffee. I've joined a support group for people who've survived intimate partner violence. It took me a long time to accept that's what I was, a survivor of domestic violence. It's hard to reconcile that identity when the violence was so coldly calculated, so financially motivated, rather than arising from anger or passion. But I'm learning to trust my instincts again. Learning that love shouldn't make you vulnerable to murder. Learning that 43 years of marriage doesn't mean you really know someone. Last week, I had lunch with Detective Chen, who's become a friend. She told me that Robert's lawyer had reached out, asking if I would consider writing a letter to the parole board when he becomes eligible in 15 years. I laughed. Actually laughed. I'll write him a letter, I told her. But it won't be the one he's hoping for. Because here's what I've learned. Some people see your trust as opportunity, your love as weakness, your life as currency. And the most dangerous person in your world might be the one who knows you best. But I'm still here. Still standing. Still breathing. And that's the greatest revenge of all.